between, I would say, financially literate Black people, and then we have the perception of those who are not, financially literate because their lifestyle or their life situation, so on and so forth. Right? How can we explain to ourselves that a lot of the time, affluence is not a result of literacy, but affluence is at times a result of opportunity. So how would you package that in a more concise way for us to understand it?
Um, if Larry and Dale know me, I can't put anything in a concise way. So what I will say is that we have to have the data to back us up, brother. I say all the time. I say it all the time that the marketplace of ideas is a battlefield, and you need what I call intellectual weaponry. When you go out here and promote ideas, promulgate ideologies, you need the data and the research to support what you're saying. So now, if there's some way, one of the brilliant brothers or sisters among us can kind of package that in, in a way that can be accessible, and can be kind of like not to diminish the premise of your question, but maybe kind of like an elevator pitch type of thing. That would be good. That would be a wonderful thing that we could do, but I wouldn't be able to do it. That's all I'm saying. I hope that answers your question, brother.
Hey Larry. Hey Larry.
Hi.
This is Eric. Can I just interject some comments here?
You can do a clarifying question now, and the interjections are later.
Okay.
So
well, I'll wait till later because I'm not really familiar or understanding the format here. So basically, everybody was given a question, and each person goes,
But I explain. I'll explain it again. So there was a list of questions that we sent out, right?
Oh, hold on. Larry, stop my time.
I did. I just did.
Okay.
There was a list of questions that went out, right? Each person get to choose the question that they gonna answer. They got 3 minutes to answer the question. Then there's clarifying questions after they answer the question for 7 minutes, right? So a total of at least 10 minutes talking. And then once everybody goes at the end, if there's any like rebuttal or debate, then we'll do it at the end. But at the beginning, we're just warming up with answers to the questions.
Okay, I got you.
So if you can ask your rebut or whatever in a clarifying manner, that would be good. But if not, we can save it till later.
I have a
reclaiming
question.
my time.
All right. So Eric or Simonetta, whoever had one.
Well, I guess I just wanted to. I don't guess. I just wanted to sort of respond to the brother's statement about having data. I mean, I don't have. Huh?
In a clarifying question way, though. if it's not a question, we could just respond to him later, though. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. All right. I'll respond later. All
right. Simonetta, go
Okay.
question.
Yeah, thank you. So I guess I'm still not clear about like how we define financial literacy and how we define like wealth accumulation. For me, it seems as if you need both, because what good is it to sort of like redistribute the wealth so the society is more equitable, more fair, if the person doesn't have like the financial literacy to manage the money that you give them so that they don't go back into the cycle of poverty? So don't you really need both? So it's good that you were thinking about redistribution of wealth so it recycles, but it's also good that the person learns how to manage that money that is given to them.
Well, I think the problem is, I don't want to presume what you're assuming, but I think the problem is in general that we assume that poor people, especially the Black poor, don't know how to manage their finances. And I think that presumption is the foundation of how we deal with Black poverty. Okay. Oh, you're not poor because of systemic issues. You're not poor because of structural issues. Oh, you just need to manage your finances better. So rather than deal with an issue like, rather than go out and confront capital and confront the power system and confront the power structure to redistribute the wealth, we put the blame on the victim. We blame the victim, and we say, well, look, we're going to start this little program here. And, we're going to teach you how to, do a checkbook and, how to invest and all like that. and you give these people the certificates, and they go out with all these wonderful money management skills. They don't have any money. Okay, you know, I think that type of mindset is as old as poverty itself. And that type of paternalistic way of looking at the poor, especially the Black poor, has been put forward as a rationale or justification for the mass inequality, economic inequality that we have in this country and really throughout the entire globe.
That's a good point. Thank you.
I had to mute you because it was feedback. Go ahead, unmute yourself.
Okay, so the question is, how would you address the notion that financial literacy leads to financial stability? And what I mean by that is, if you have an individual that you know, learns the system, may not even go to school for business, but just had an understanding of how like commerce works, and because of that knowledge, they lift themselves out of a place of poverty. Would you say that there are exceptions?
There are exceptions to any general rule, but again, you know, we can't. I have a, you know, and this was my critique of the sister, the sister who first spoke. You know, we really can't rely on anecdotes. Okay, anything that we do or any way we tackle a situation. I've always been a numbers guy. Any way we tackle a situation has to be based on the data, has to be based on stats, has to be based on research. And you may have some exceptions where this person was able to get out of poverty or this person was able to get out of poverty, but you can't use that for the general rule, especially in the face of just an insurmountable amount of structural deficiency, structural oppression, things like that. I compare it to winning the lottery and someone dealing with poverty. You know, well, I played the lottery and I won, so I'm going to start a program of how you can play the lottery too, and you may win. You know, that's what I hear when I hear about, you know, someone talks about financial literacy. You know, you're basically teaching people how to play the lottery, and you may win, you may lose, but the problem is we're wasting so much time and energy and resources, the meager resources we do have, on something that's not going to have the biggest benefit for the most people.
Got 1 minute and 20 seconds. Laura, go ahead.
All right, so my question is, from what I'm hearing, it sounds like you're saying that, you know, because they don't have, financial literacy is meaningless if you don't have any finances. So I know that there has been proposals of giving everyone a basic wage. I know that was mentioned in one of the videos, the Rutgerd video, and his TED Talk. He talked about that a lot. And I believe that it was mentioned in another video as well. So I guess my question is, how can we go about, if we decide to give everyone a basic livable wage so they can spend their time in a creative fashion doing whatever they want to do, actually, instead of just working for the sake of working, which is what most people are doing right now, would you say, how would we combat people looking at it as just a handout? Because there's a huge negative connotation with welfare and taking money from this system that's oppressing us. So would you suggest that, well, that I'm just gonna leave it at that. How would you suggest we take the money, if that was the case, without feeling like we were just taking handouts?
You got 38 seconds.
Well,
go ahead.
Okay, I'll be very brief. First of all, we have to go to the numbers. We have to go to the research and the data. It's not about accepting handouts, you know, or presumably, you know, thinking that we're, you know, taking handouts from the government. Is getting that what we're supposed to get as people who have given so much to this country, have been oppressed for so long. We are owed this. What I'm asking for is what we're owed. So, and we have to frame the conversation from those terms, whether you're talking about reparations, baby bonds, universal basic income, and we need to be able to do whatever it takes to take back what is ours.
All right. Before we go to the next one, I love that question, and I sorry I had to chime in, but it's always unique that we say that, and not saying that you said it, but we normally say this handouts, but the people that we inspiring to be didn't get to their place without handouts, right? They got the free labor, the enslaved labor, cheap labor, exploited labor, and handouts. You know what I mean? So it's like, that's crazy. But
let me also say, let me also just interject just real quick. I have plenty of data here. I hope we'll be able to go through it as the conversation goes forward. But the entire white middle class was created from handouts, okay? So if they can get handouts, damn it, we can get handouts.
Right. So Semineta wanted to go next. Whoever wanted to get in line to go next, let me know. Eric, okay, it was Semineta, and then we got Laura, I'm sorry. And Eric, if you got the questions, it's in the comments. So if you want to choose the questions, if not, I can share my screen. But Semineta go first, and then Laura, and then whoever else got to go.
Okay, let me go back to the question. I think I picked number 8. Is individualism problematic for Black folks in America as it pertains to their economics? So I'm going to share my thoughts from the perspective of someone who is thinking as one who wants to go into business one day. So right now, there's a lot of this push for, promote Black-owned businesses, support Black-owned businesses. And I've been doing my part by seeking out businesses in the community that are Black-owned. And one thing that I noticed, and a lot of them are relatively like small scale, so small to medium-sized enterprises, but a lot of them, their main clientele are, other Black people. They're not getting a lot of their revenues from people outside of their community. And one thing that we always discuss when I speak to these business owners is that really the health of your business as a producer is dependent on your consumers. So if your consumers who are majority Black are not doing well, how can you expect them to patronize your businesses, patronize the services that you offer, or even really expand you expanding as a business and hopefully helping somebody else to, establish a business, and then it sort of like trickles on to the rest of the community. And they agree with me when I kind of, ask these sorts of questions. So then it goes back from thinking just as a sole business owner to I have to care about the community that I depend on for my business to thrive. So in moving forward, it's in the interest of someone who is thinking as a business owner to pursue social policies that ensure the health of the community that they're going to be gaining a lot of their consumers from. And again, this is me coming from the perspective as somebody who wants to venture into a business and is one that has been doing my part to try to support Black-owned businesses in my community.
You have a minute left. You want to concede your time?
Yeah, that's all that I have to say. I'd like to give that minute over to anyone who has questions or comments.
All right. So, Asafo, I think that's your hand raised. Do you have the first clarifying question? If not, anybody else has a clarifying question?
I do.
We go low.
I'm sorry. That hand was up from the previous.
Okay.
Previous question.
So Laura, then Darryl.
Okay. My question is, how to put this? Okay. So if you are, would you think it would be beneficial for people to say pool their money together to help others start businesses in the community if you had a community pool?
I absolutely agree. But let me throw back at you a question. So would that mean something similar to a SUSU system, which actually back in my country of origin, which is Ghana, we have something called SUSU that people do. It's a system that's highly reliant on trust and social bond and cohesion. which is another thing that I think we really need to work hard on, which is developing that trust among ourselves, developing mechanisms of accountability to make sure that nobody betrays that trust, because really Susu is depending on trust and community. But if you're not thinking about Susu, what would be the other option? Black-owned banks, looking for a Black-owned bank that you can put your money into. So that's sort of like my statement / question that I would propose to you.
Nice.
Daryl, clarifying question.
Okay. So yeah. So when Larry asked me about this, he said, you know, what would I want to teach? What I want to explain to Black people? And I said leverage. So we spoke about it twice, but the leverage is in essence what it is. It's using what you already have to get something that you don't have. Right. So I can use what I currently am in possession with to gain something else. So my question for you is, Black-owned businesses, if you think that, like, if you're looking at support, right, is support only, are you speaking about supporting Black-owned businesses as only being patrons, as like buying something, or do you look at supporting Black-owned businesses as our community leveraging what we already have to make sure that they're successful? Let it be manufacturing, right? Let it be real estate, let it be other things. Although we may not have the agency to purchase a lot of goods from their shops, do you think that we kind of switch support so that it's like us leveraging what we do have to assist them to be successful?
Absolutely. So I'm going to divert a little bit. So I'm sort of like a big picture kind of thinker. And one thing that I'm always thinking about is how to develop not only a domestic strong Black economy, but a global Black economy. Because as you said, leverage is something that we really have to work on. And if you even look back at like the civil rights movement of people who have been really like fighting for social justice, a lot of their funding and their patronizing came from the Black-owned businesses that were able to pool their resources together to really help them with their social causes. Because as we know, whoever pays you feeds you, right? So I'm always thinking about ways to connect Black business owners here to even my country of origin. So I want to see more Black people from here doing business in my country of origin, getting contracts to acquire land in my country of origin, helping to develop those producer networks so that it can scale, so that we can become even greater type of producers. We can own factories, we can manufacture on a larger scale. Those are sort of like the big picture things that I think about. So to answer directly your question, it's not just, you know, me going and buying a sweater from a Black-owned business, but it's also trying to help like scale their businesses, driving more consumers to their businesses, helping them gain loyalty consumers, things like that. It's something that I'm always brainstorming, I'm always thinking about, because that one small business cannot operate in isolation. We need to create sort of like an ecosystem that is sustainable. Thank you for your question.
I got a clarifying question if nobody else have one. Could you speak to the concept of, in a way, Black capitalism, or people who be like, I'm successful, I'm wealthy, I made it. Like, could you speak to that as your thoughts on it and how it refers to individualism and group economics?
You know, I'm still trying to wrap my mind around it myself. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that phrase that people often use, you lift as you climb, right? And sort of like the sort of the responsibility that we put on our Black entertainers and our Black celebrities to pull their resources back into the community. Is that what you would mean by capitalism? Like a Michael Jordan becoming so successful and then building a school in his former community, or that successful Black billionaire guy who paid for the tuition of the Morehouse students? Is that what we mean by Black capitalism, doing good for the community? I don't know. So I'm still not really clear on that myself to be able to answer your question intelligently.
Okay. Any other questions? We got 1 minute and 50 seconds. All right. All right, so we'll go to the next. Thanks for your contributions. Who's next? Was it Laura? Okay, so Laura, Tim, Dale, Daryl, and then Baba, Eric, you can go after that. I think that'll be everybody.
Hmm. Okay, so my question is number 10. We hear generational wealth often, but what does that mean and look like to you? So for me, generational wealth is when you can pass down sustainable finances in a system that's already set up to your family, um, at least multiple generations, not just your kids, but I would say at least 2 generations down. I like to look at it as, and you see a lot of old money when it comes to people who don't look like us. And I think it's probably because of the fact that, unfortunately, a lot of our people who did have money, it was stolen from them. Property was taken, and we have a lot of even businesses and patents and whatnot have been taken from the rightful Black owners who created them. So I think that we basically have to start from now, in a sense. If we want generational wealth, we have to be thinking generationally. We have a mindset, a microwave generation right now, unfortunately, where it's all about, I want things instantly. How can I find the shortcut? And yes, a good mindset will give you a little bit of a shortcut. But when it comes to building something that's substantial, I think that in the long run, we're all going to have to really kind of not only just look at some of these wealthy, billionaires that are out here. A lot of these guys, they made their money off of hurting other people. And we don't necessarily want to do that with our community as well. I think that we can have generational wealth if we actually just start looking at, kind of what the lady who spoke before me, what she said. If we start building our businesses and actually can start building an ecosystem within the Black community, we would be able to have businesses that are patroned by each other. We would be able to have resources, banks, grocery stores, clothing stores, what do you call them, like your mom and pop little knickknack shops, things like that. If we all just start having these businesses, so we don't have to go elsewhere, and we put our money in them, and like she said, we start making those grow, and then we actually invest our money into trust for our kids, and everyone's always thinking about like college funds, but unfortunately we see that that's an old money mentality. They want to put all of their money into college funds instead of actually just putting it into something that could grow, or investing it for that child so it can grow as they're young. The lady who went first, I commend you 100% for teaching your 6 and 12-year-old, I think you said, how to trade now. I think that is the only way we're going to have generational wealth, is if we start having these money conversations with our children in the homes as they're coming up. And we don't give them the idea that they can't. We limit ourselves. And the only reason why we don't go far is because we've been told that we could not. If we take these mental chains off of ourselves and realize that there is nothing that these white people can do that we can't, we can do more than that, because we just got to do.
Okay. So it looked like Asafa was first, Daryl, then Brother Eric, and then I can get after that if somebody else. Go ahead. Asafa, clarifying question.
Well, I don't have a clarifying question. I'm going to wait until the end of the end of the question and answer period.
Okay. Okay.
I'll just say that what she just said was ridiculous, but other than that, I'm good. I'll prove it later.
All right.
Well, first, but before I go on my clarifying question, as a group, I think that we all should definitely be respectful to each other's opinion, even if it is something that we do feel it's ridiculous. I think that we should use different words to express that, just out of respect. But what I will say is, when you were speaking about kind of the acknowledgement of teaching your children how to invest, and that is what we kind of think about financial literacy. But we also have to understand that investing in the stock market is also speculation, right? So if you're talking about economic stability, investing in the stock market, no matter how much research you do, is still speculation. So my clarifying question is, would you say that it is it will be beneficial for us to teach our children the same systems that our counterparts are using, or should we teach our children the different techniques that we have used as a people that allowed us to have a sense of stability in our community, versus looking at the tactics that we see rise and they fall, they collapse, they're in bankruptcy, so on and so forth. Do you think that we should continue to ascribe to these systems should we ascribe to these economic systems that we know are going to fail us eventually, versus finding a new wave and a new way of investing in our children, in our community?
Okay, wonderful question. I think that we need to not necessarily completely, we need to take what we see them doing and evolve it to make it work for us. And when I'm saying investing, we can invest in ourselves, as in you can take your money and invest it into other Black-owned businesses. You can, and I think that's really what we need to do, is to start pooling our money together, kind of what I was mentioning in an earlier question. But as far as investments goes, you have a lot of people who say, I want to start a business, but I don't have the capital, and a bank won't give them a loan. Well, okay, well, let's go into your community and see who all wants to invest to help this person get off the ground. And then once they maybe make a certain amount of profit, then they can give back money to the people, or maybe they become stockholders in that business. I think we need to start looking at it as that, instead of necessarily saying, oh, let me go invest in Apple. I'm not saying don't put money in those people's pockets. I'm saying we need to invest in our people and make our banks stronger and our community stronger in order to kind of push us forward. Because like you said, what they do, it crashes and falls because they create it to do that, because they know that they can manipulate the system and make as much money going down as you are going up. So if we can take that and make a system where we can work it ourselves as well, why not? I just think that we need to look at what's working for them and see how we can evolve it to make it sustainable without their help.
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying that. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
That helped me too. Go ahead, Baba. Eric.
Yeah, I was going to say, with regard to the idea of building or passing on generational wealth, I think one of the financial instruments that we often, not just we, but, a lot of people often overlook is dividend paying whole life insurance. A lot of folks, who are in the financial industry, these gurus, so-called gurus, for example, like Susie Orman, will often talk negatively about, whole life insurance from the perspective that it's expensive, but going back to the discussion about being financially literate, I think when you do your due diligence, you'll find that there's a way to actually set up a whole life insurance to where it will benefit you while you're actually living, right?
Listen,
And so
Pre-tax dollars.
You clarify a question because it's eating up her clarifying.
Okay, well, yeah. And so if she could just speak to, I don't know if she's even familiar with dividend paying whole life insurance, and how that can be a pretty much guaranteed way of passing on wealth to your heirs.
I've heard a little bit about that, whereas you put in money and then you can actually take out some of it without the tax deductions or something like that. But I'm not 100% sure on how that works. I'm sure you probably know a lot more about that than I do. But I do like the idea. I do think that using tools like that is imperative, because you have a lot of people who don't know about that. A lot of people also don't realize you can invest in tax liens and double or triple your money that way as well. You can also invest in network marketing businesses, and as long as it's a good one that has an actual a product, or even if it's a co-opt, then you can pass that on generationally as well. So there are a lot of different tools and systems that we can use. It's just about knowing what's out there, because right now, the only thing, if you ask someone, how do you pass on money or save money? The only thing most people, the average person knows, is stick it in a bank or put it in a trust. And those are the two lowest forms, I feel like, almost.
All right. Asafo, if you got a question, I'm going to go, then you can go. So I think quite often we use these terms, and I know it's hard to forget. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but English language is not our language, right? But now it's our language, and so we use different words, and we talk about wealth, and our wealth is like what white people have, but seems like we don't always define wealth the way they actually define it, because we think about we can outspend them and get more income. But could you define wealth for me in your terms?
I define wealth. I would say wealth is when you have money or energy coming into you on a consistent basis that you can actually use to do what you want with. So you think of people, I feel like there's rich and then there's wealthy. Rich people, you got a lot of money, but you might spend it. I feel like rich people are like the lottery winners. Wealthy people are the ones who are like who make it into like the multi, 10 billion, 10 million and above, those kinds of people. I would say definitely that wealth is more stable than riches. I would say that wealth and health go kind of hand in hand as well. A lot of people just look at wealth as money, but it's a whole package. I think when you're wealthy, you have more of an alignment. You got your mind. Your mind is at ease because you don't have all that stress. Your body, you take care of your body, and because you have the time and the resources to do so, and you have better relationships. So I think when you're truly wealthy, you have a well-rounded alignment with yourself and with your source. And so I think there are a lot of rich white people and there are a lot of rich black people. There are a lot of rich people in general, but I don't think not everyone's wealthy.
Safa, she got 50 seconds. Do you have a question? Oh, okay. Any other questions? I got a last one. Dale?
I have one. When we talk about generational wealth, do you think it's something that should be solely at the individual family level, or could it be something that should also be looked at a community level? Like a community saying, hey, we need to do generational wealth for the community.
I love that idea. And I think that's phenomenal because it takes a tribe to, it takes a village, So I feel like you need to really look at your community as your family. I think the reason that we have so much issues in the Black community is because you got a lot of people who are like, let me get mine and then I'm gonna get out and I'm gonna forget everybody else. So I think if we erase it's a lack and a scarcity mindset that is messing us up. So if we stop thinking that if I get something, then this other person can't, and we start looking at it as, okay, look, my family's set up, so let me go ahead and set up my neighbor. There's no reason why if you're financially free, your neighbor should not be. Like, you should go next door and talk to that person. We need to connect.
All right, thanks, sis. I appreciate that. Let me look at my message to see who was next.
I think
Nope.
Tim,
yeah. So Tim, Dale, then Daryl, and then Eric.
Okay. I chose number 10. The question says, we hear generational wealth often. What does that mean and look like to you? For me personally, I think generational wealth is the dissemination of knowledge. Before you can be wealthy in currency, you have to have the knowledge that is passed down from generations and generations. Your grandpa could be a farmer, teaching his grandson how to farm and bringing that knowledge on down the line. You don't have to technically have the money to understand those trades. Yes, when you get to a certain affluential status, you have to have the licensing to go in and do those things in the corporate world. But if you have the knowledge and you can dissipate and show everybody else in the community how to do it, or if they can look within you and outsource, hey, Brother John needs to know how to do this, I can come to that person in the neighborhood and trust them, and it'll work that way. But on the financial side of it, passing on the financial literacy, like the brother said, understanding what whole life insurance is, Roth IRAs, trust funds, real estate. Real estate can be the biggest thing that we have as far as monetary, because it's a liquidable asset if you look at it at the end of the day. I always tell, like, my daughters, I got 2 houses in their name. They're only 4 and 8. Understanding how that land always is going to appreciate in value, even if it goes down in certain areas, that's yours. You can, if you die within a trust fund, I can allocate that to my kids. Understanding the thought process is the biggest thing that generational wealth. We sometimes, as people, get stuck and we look at the outward things and say, man, I can't make it. If we liberate our mind and figure out, okay, let me get around this brother, let me drain all the knowledge and from him that he knows as a mentorship, I can then provide my immediate family. Then once I put myself on, I can then feel confident and go out and tell other people, hey, this may work for you, may not work for you, but let me share this knowledge so we all can get a piece of the pie. Because it's really hard in this corporate society that we have that's built, America's technically built on capitalism, but it's predatory capitalism. The Asian people set up in our neighborhoods, the Arabs set up in our neighborhoods, the dollar's not circulating in the Black community anymore. So once we get to a certain point, I mean, if we put each other on, we can reverse the script. I hate to say that, but we can set up places in their neighborhoods and they come in and buy and don't know, what it is. But that's just my thought on number 10.
Okay, got 20 seconds. You want to suspend that?
I'll yield my time to somebody else for those 20 seconds.
All right. Who got the first clarifying question? Okay, Laura.
Okay, so that is awesome that you have the houses in your kids' names. So how did you go about doing that?
First, I got around my brother. My brother was telling me about how to do it. All I did was literally when my real estate agent came by, I bought the houses, $30,000. I went in and just told us, look, and put my name as, I'm gonna be the buyer, but my daughter is Nevaeh as a co-buyer on it. All she had was a savings account, but it didn't matter at that point. The liquidity, everything looks through my account, my social and whatever they need to find to make sure that my account has good credit. So whenever she gets 18, if I pass away, it's already in the trust fund, my will, everything is already set up so that she has it and say, oh, yeah, my daddy got me in the will. So executor say, okay, Nevaeh, come over here. You're going to sign off on this. Here's what your daddy left you. It's now already a portion of yours anyway. It's in your name. You don't necessarily have to go to the clerical court or the register of deeds because it's technically in your name. Your dad passed away. What you need to do is just make sure you notify and take his name off, and you're the sole owner of that.
Laura, you
Genius,
can
love
also,
it.
Laura, I was just going to add that you can also do it through a beneficiary. So anytime you have an asset that's yours, like say if it's a car, if it's a home, a gun, or whatever, and you have like a retirement, whatever, when you put your beneficiary as your children, anything that you may do with that, once you're no longer able to access that, or say if you pass away, it goes on to your children as well. So that just goes with anything that's an asset that you accumulate.
Any other clarifying questions for Tim?
Well, I mean, I just want to commend the brother. This is Eric. I want to commend the brother for, having the foresight to see the importance of passing on, real property to his children, because that's one of the avenues that we can use as Africans here in America to avoid poverty is to enable our heirs to have a place to live, right? Because I mean that's a basic need, right? Shelter, and so the fact that he was able to put his children into position early on, I mean that's really how you instill financial literacy or teach financial literacy to your children by actually showing them the importance of ownership, particularly with a real property, and allowing them to see the benefits that come from ownership, and the fact that having a house, as you are coming of age, not having to worry about housing, that really puts you on the fast track. That really sets you up for success, as opposed to complaining about what the system isn't doing for us as a people. You got to take it. You got to take control. You got to take responsibility for what you can do for your family. And once your family is solidified financially, then you can start, actually helping others in the community. But it starts at home first.
We got 3 minutes and 40 seconds for a clarifying question. Anybody else have a clarifying question for him? If not, we can go to the next person. All right, cool. Thanks, brother. We are at, I gotta keep looking at it. Dale? Down?
All right. Hello, everyone. Good evening. So I had to take question 1, which is, if I remember correct, I think it's who are capitalists and is capitalism exploitative? I would say, well, actually, my answer is the answer I used earlier in a Zoom with Larry and Asafo, because it's actually is a comment from one of my friends had a question very similar to this, so I figured this is very fitting to use here. To me, the capitalists are the exploiters. Capitalism is based upon exploitation. Name any period of capitalism and you'll find exploitation. Capitalism is a commodification of all things, natural and synthetic. Capitalism was never about the social good. It's always been focused on labor of the many, feeding the profits of the few. If capitalism survives racism, it will require another exploitative tool, like racism, to feed on the disadvantaged. Capitalism is the ultimate pyramid scheme. It has a way of inspiring hope to the exploited to become exploiters if they work hard in exploiting themselves. It is sinisterly designed to occupy one's thought and time until they die without knowing they were upon the whole time. That's all I have in that one. Guess we could open it up for.
All right. You got 2 minutes. You want to throw the 2 minutes back?
No, we could.
Okay.
Back to the game, man.
All right. Who got the first one? I got one if you don't, and nobody's first. Could you explain to me what would you call LeBron James, Oprah, and whoever else, Tyler Perry, would you call those people capitalists? Or are they also being exploited?
Let's see. Well, I see LeBron James. I really don't know about his business stuff. I just see him just playing basketball. So really, he's a tool. He's a tool that's being exploited. I mean, you can look at, he may make $30 million a year or something like that, but his labor is producing how many billions of dollars for someone else. So I see him as being something that has been commodified, not something that's been commodified. And then again, I don't know what his business part is. When I look at someone like a Tyler Perry or an Oprah, I can see them as being capitalist to an extent because of them exploiting something for profit. And even when you hear about philanthropy, it's a philanthropy to excuse the exploitation. It's like, I'm paying you, to forget about the exploitation I'm doing on the other side. And when we look at Blacks who are in positions of power, say, oh, hey, we're all coming up. No, we ain't, because we all ain't getting a check from this shit. I'm sorry, I know we're supposed to curse, but we all aren't getting a check from this. These individuals are getting checks, And so that's the difference when we talk about individual wealth and collective wealth, And, the concern of having Black capitalists, if you could say that, having Black people who exploit, is not the way forward if we're talking about collective progress.
All right, love it.
I gotta clarifying. So once again, I think that we're taking capitalism and we're slapping exploitation on it as if these things are interchangeable, right? So to say that Tyler Perry was a capitalist, right? He is, because he capitalized on opportunities, right, when they presented themselves, right? That doesn't mean he exploited anyone else. It just means that he leveraged his ability, right, to take advantage of a situation that presented himself. So he capitalized on it. Oprah did the same exact thing, right? LeBron James, the same exact thing. They have these things and they leverage them to get to a better economic place. So my question is it possible to be a capitalist without exploiting others?
I think we can, when we talk about business and someone being an entrepreneur, entrepreneurship doesn't have to be exploitation. But when we see people who are capitalizing, then, it is about exploitation. We can't, assume any type of business is exploitative. We have to look at what is being produced and how it is being produced. You know, if this is it putting forth exploitative prices? Is it exploiting, you know, labor wages and things like that? Well, okay, you have, you know, a capitalistic business, but you can't create a business that's like, you get co-ops. You could be an entrepreneur that has a co-op. You could be an entrepreneur that ensures that the profit sharing not only amongst the people who work for them, but also within the community as well. So I think we have to look at, well, here's a revenue that's coming in, how are people being treated at, say, Tyler Perry Studios, you know, how good are those wages, you know, those people are getting, you know, the kind of product he's putting forth. Is that really to the community benefit, or is he doing minstrel shows? You know, we got to have that conversation. If it's minstrel shows, he's making money off of that. That's a problem. He truly is a capitalist from exploitative sense.
I got a one. Go ahead, Laura. You go first.
Okay, I'm gonna play devil's advocate for a second here. So if we think, how do you stop people from capitalizing on you then in your community? How do we police, for lack of a better word, how do we police our business owners, our black business owners, to make sure that they're not taking advantage of their people? Because we know that, you know, it can be very easy, especially in the beginning of a business, to be like, okay, well, I'm gonna get, you know, let me get my kids to run the store for me, and I'm not gonna pay them. How do we get out of the mindset of giving free labor to our people? Because I think that in our community, we do a lot of free labor, but we still have to pass around our money. So how would you suggest we go about making sure that happens?
I actually have an example of that. There was a business, a black restaurant that it had pretty good food. Unfortunately, the owner exploited his staff. I mean, grossly paid these people, and this guy's riding up in different Escalades. How do you fix it? Boycott. You know, we're going to boycott Nike, we're going to boycott Starbucks. We have to do it to people in our own community. I mean, because that's a part of accountability that we need. You know, we don't like Tyler Perry's, you know, some of his movies. You know, boycott those movies, hold them accountable. I mean, I think we cannot be afraid to hold ourselves accountable. I think that's very important, especially when you have blacks in some level of position of power and influence. You know, it's like, hey, look, if you're in this position of power and we're going to be giving you this money for this product, I need to make sure that you paying Pookie where he's supposed to be getting paid, you know. And let's say you have a business that caters to the black community, no other businesses. It doesn't mean you can exploit them and say, I can charge wherever I want because you people can't go anywhere else. Well, we need to boycott that person too. Call them out, you know, and say, hey, you know, you won't be able to go to the cookout because we know how you be doing people. You know, we have to be willing to hold ourselves, especially people who look like us, in any position of power. We got to hold them accountable. And I think that's how we deal with that.
All right, quick question. So I think sometimes if something is forced on us for so long and it becomes normal, we normalize it. You know, you think about Stockholm Syndrome, people protect exploitive connection. Could you speak to, I guess, our double consciousness of not thinking exploitation is normal and it has to be normal or it's fair or whatever the case may be? Could you speak a little bit to that?
Well, I would say, you know, we are within the environment of white supremacy, and we have been in white supremacy, the environment at birth, the educational system, which teaches us all to be white supremacists. You know, you may have black skin, but you're taught to be a white supremacist. You're taught to have these views that exploitation is okay, and all these different things. There's other systems you could talk about as well. All these systems are all encased within a white supremacist environment. So when we have that understanding, you know, when we talk about, I guess, you know, I might go off topic, but when we talk about financial literacy, is actually understanding the environment that we're in. That's a white supremacist environment. So you have a system, that system is going to produce something that's going to be white supremacist. So far as literacy is actually understanding the environment that you're in. Because if you can, the only way to transcend the environment, you have to be conscious of that you're even in it. So.
Love it. So as we go to Daryl, I want to put something on the brain. So let's say, for instance, there was this child trafficking organization. And the child trafficking organization built up a massive wealth. And then they built an institution based off of the child trafficking finances, and then they create a system for you to participate in there. And this is just a rhetorical question. Would you be conceding to how the money was got by playing the system, by legitimizing whatever criminality that they had? Like, would you be conceding to what actually happened to get to that point to play the game? Again, that's a rhetorical question. And then Darryl, go ahead.
That's a heavy rhetorical. All right, so that's a heavy rhetorical. Because I think, man, you know, so many people play the game. They call it walking the Willy Bobo, but yeah, we got to figure out how to get to who we need to be without doing that. But kind of in the format, I'm choosing question number 9, and question number 9 it says, from your understanding, how has laws hurt or helped Black people's economics in America? And because I'm a history teacher, I'm gonna speak from a historical place. I'm just going to talk about kind of like Reconstruction, right? If you're talking about the laws coming out of Reconstruction, there were several laws that kind of gave the facade of potential brighter day for African Americans. A lot of us are familiar with the 40 Acres and a Mule, but the actual term was Special Ordinance 15, where we were supposed to get a parcel of land south of North Carolina into Florida. And then we also had this thing called the Port Royal Experiment, where they sent business owners from the north down to the south to prove that Blacks could work without being whipped, and they can work for a wage. But what happened was those laws that were put in place prevented African Americans from ownership, but allowed them to work, right? And then we go into Black codes, which pretty much made sure that African Americans had to work, because if not, they would be charged with vagrancy. But they did not have the right to own land. Right, because the 15th Amendment didn't, the 14th Amendment didn't happen, we weren't citizens, so we couldn't actually own land at that time. So those laws from the beginning, it put assets, land, right, in the production of these lands in the hands of individuals that were not African Americans or Blacks. So from then, those laws prevented us from allowing us to build this sense of economic stability. Then you move forward into the concept like with redlining, where it prevents us from buying property that has value. Right, so in essence, we were just buying properties to have a house to live in, but when we sold it back, we were in a hole, or the neighborhoods were dilapidated. We didn't have the ability to make profit once we sold those assets. Then you go to the African Americans at the time that chose not to work for someone and chose to start their own businesses. Those individuals were considered vagrants and then went to jail. So then we have these laws that were constructed, right, to make sure that Black entrepreneurship was not even an option. And then you get to a place where that's how you have that generational wealth. It starts accumulating on one side, and it's generational poverty is perpetuated on the other side, because the laws are put in place to make sure that African Americans, as far as economics, assets, and wealth, it could have never grown, right? Because we were legit put in a situation where we could not own assets. So that's kind of my quick spiel. We can go on all day, but that's what I have for how laws have hurt African Americans as far as economics.
And you have a minute. You want to get that time back or keep going?
Okay, I can keep going. Where you had some laws that gave us the facade of economic stability and success. And it was really is Title IX, right? If you look at Title IX is or affirmative action, I should say. It kind of gave us this idea that these laws are going to make sure that we have access to this education so that we could be wealthy. But what it did was it put us in a position where we had this education further indoctrinated into like white supremacy. Then it put us back into this world. So we never really saw ourselves as owners. We saw ourselves as workers, right? So that was really the ploy. Going back, if you want to talk about the way that we were educated as African Americans, Booker T. Washington, and how he created this whole, the Tuskegee Institute and all these other HBCUs, right? Really, what it really was A&M schools were putting us in a place where we were going to be manufacturers and workers versus owners. So all of these different things that gave us a facade that we were going to be in a better economic place, what it did was it indoctrinated us into a place where we were okay with being the worker, not the owner, or the owner of means of production.
Okay, great. Who got the first clarifying question? So I have one. So could you? It's kind of a twofold question, right? Coming from my European education, it sounds like you're making a bunch of excuses, man. Like y'all, why can't Black people just pull themselves up by the bootstrap? One, and then hell, look at Oprah. Like,
Mhm.
look at these
Yeah.
people who are able to make it. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Yeah.
Okay, so I can speak to that. So first, I could speak to the excuse part. Um, excuses are things that we kind of construct out of kind of like being in a place of displacement. I gave you facts, right? Those aren't excuses; those are actual things that happen. In the second portion, if you're speaking to the exceptions, kind of like our brother said a little bit earlier, Oprah she didn't own the means of production in those networks, right? So although Oprah may be a billionaire, she still is not she's not in control of her actual product. Even her network, she has a board of different investors, right? Oprah name is on it because it looks good, right? But Oprah is still not someone that is writing the checks for everybody that works there. She's not in control of that, right? So if you're talking about the facade, once again, these laws and these things make it look like we actually have a sense of economic stability, or us as individuals own these things, but we really don't. It's really a smokescreen.
Okay. Who else? Go ahead, Laura.
All right. On you saying that it's really a smokescreen and that people aren't really owning these things. So would you say that a lot of these Black celebrities or wealthy people that own these businesses, you know, your Oprahs, your Tyler Perry's, all of these people, that they're actually more so just being controlled by others so they could look like they're in power and other Black people will follow them, almost like a false messiah in a sense. So if that's the case, then how do you suggest from a historic standpoint, writing history now, how do we need to go about making sure that does not keep happening?
Okay, great question. I think that what happens is, you know, the Oprahs, the LeBron James, just because we mentioned them already, right? They understand that they are operating within a system of white supremacy. They understand it, right? And so because they understand they're in the system, they're going to use the agency to do as much good as they possibly can in their positions. This is not saying that they're exploiting us intentionally, right? But I feel that they do understand that I have to do what I have to do right now, just so that we can, you know, this isn't a fix all. This is what we can do for right now. I mean, the way I feel that we should that we can move forward in that is that instead of having LeBron James or Oprah sign contracts to these networks, like allowing us to build up these individual networks, right? That will, you know, that will kind of propel them or push them forward, right? Like let's say for example, Revolt, right? Revolt has 15 actual owners, right? And 3 of those owners are African American. Now, what Revolt is doing is Revolt is using the same platform of these other conglomerates, like you said, like kind of let's find out what works. And we're going to start to kind of bring in individuals that look like us to have this ownership in this agency. So to answer your question on how we can kind of get away from this smoke screen, it's really going to be about African Americans or people of color in America really investing and finding value in the things that they create, right? Because if we don't see the value in the things that we create, our history books, you know, our publishing companies, our record labels, our, you know, our like these things, like we all have done it before. We turn on a movie and it's low budget, we turn it off because it's like, I'm not watching this, right? We all do it. That I think that is where we have to stop. Or if a book comes up, you know, up and it's like paperback and it's low quality, we automatically throw it off. So I think that finding value in the things that we currently have will change the entire scope and allow us to build on the things we currently do have.
Thank you.
Who else got one? We got 3 minutes and 30 seconds. All right. I guess I'll do one more. Would you I don't know if you said something earlier, but would you be comfortable with abandoning capitalism and create something else, or what's your idea?
My idea, and once again, I'm going to speak from the perspective of a teacher, because that's what I am. My idea is going to be not necessarily we as a people, we can't abandon capitalism because that's the system we live in. It's the same way like Oprah Winfrey could not abandon the structure of TV. LeBron James can't escape the structure of the NBA, right? Because that's like their agency is most effective in these realms. So not completely abandon these things, but at the same time, we have to know how much energy to give to a system that's been set up to disenfranchise us, and how much energy to put into building something new, right? So as a teacher, what I do is I teach American history. right? I teach an American history class, but I also wrote a curriculum for African American studies, and I teach that, right? So I know that I have to teach American history because that's a part of our core curriculum, right? But I also kind of like went to bat for myself and other teachers so that we had this thing on the side. So now what's happening is I am doing what I have to do when teaching these lies, right? But I'm also developing this coursework, this study, right, and getting other other education so that I can start my own school, I can sell my curriculum, so on and so forth. So I think that we have to understand how to operate within the realms of these systems that have been set up to disenfranchise us, but also know how much energy we should put into creating something new for ourselves and our community. Right? Nothing is holistic.
All right. Any other clarifying questions before we go to the last part of the question and answer? All right. Appreciate you, brother.
Yes, sir.
Brother Eric, do you have the question that you want to tackle?
Yes, I'm gonna, can you hear me? Okay, yes, I'm going to address the question regarding if financial literacy can pull Black folk out of poverty, true or false. So before I address the question, I just want to introduce myself rather quickly. Eric Johnson is my government name. I also go by Eze, which means the king or a king. It's my spiritual name. Born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland, to a single mother of 6 children. I'm the youngest of 6. Basically raised on welfare, Section 8 apartment. We were evicted twice. The second time we were evicted, I actually saw my mother cry because she was not sure how she was going to, support her family, how we were going to survive. But nevertheless, seeing my mother cry at a young age left an indelible impression in my mind that having resources was extremely important, right? And so as I grew older, I became very interested in computers, in basically computers, right? Computer games, computers. And so I actually, one Christmas, convinced my mother to buy me one of the first home computers called a Commodore VIC-20. Somehow she was able to find the money in spite of the fact that she was on welfare. I learned how to program a computer. As a result, once I graduated from high school, I went on to university and I got a degree in computer science, and eventually I became a computer engineer, right? And so one of the first books that I read was by Carter G. Woodson, The Miseducation of the Negro. And in that book, he says that what we're merely taught seldom nourishes the mind like that which we teach ourselves, right? And so as a result of that, I started reading books on finance because, again, having been evicted twice as a young child, I understood the importance of having financial resources. So I was always an avid saver. I always save my money. That's fine. I always save my money, because I recognize the importance of having financial resources. But what I recognized was that I had the first equation, or the first part of basically building wealth, correct? Basically saving money. But the second part of the equation, actually taking that saved money and having that money work for you, investing in something, I was not aware of. So I started reading books. I came across a real estate book on how to procure real estate, basically with no or little money down. Took that information, I basically applied it, became a real estate investor. I now own property here in Baltimore City. I went on to get interested in the stock market, specifically trading stock options. And so I actually developed an online course, developed a business called Cubicle Investing, LLC, where I actually teach folks how to trade options. Everything is automated online. And so that's also a stream of income that I have in addition to the real estate investing. And so the question becomes, can financial literacy actually pull you out of poverty? Absolutely, because I'm a prime example of how being financially literate, being financially disciplined, being a steward of your financial resources can pull you out of poverty. I was raised in poverty, and I'm no longer in poverty. So in spite of the systemic racism, in spite of the fact that, there were opportunities that were not given to me, that obviously are given to my counterparts, I still managed to pull myself out of poverty because of financial literacy.
Cool.
And so
Appreciate
there are various aspects of financial literacy. I don't know all the aspects. I'm familiar with the Federal Reserve, real estate, understand what fiat currency means. I understand the stock market and how important it is to invest. But yes, being financially literate can pull you out of poverty if you have the courage and the wherewithal, to actually, utilize the information and actually believe in yourself that you can exceed your current position.
All right. So clarifying questions. Who first?
Um,
Daryl, then Marcel. Okay, go. And then Asaf.
Eric, man, I wanted to ask you two questions. Do you think it's ironic that you have, more than two people on this call that has pretty much the same story as you, right? Like I'm from the projects and all of that, and I'm no longer in poverty, right? Education did kind of pull me out. But a lot of people would say that we are the exceptions. So that's one question. Do you believe in the idea of us being exceptions? Or do you think that what we've been able to accomplish, everyone of color can accomplish? That's the first question. The second question I had for you is that because you were in poverty, were there any social programs that you took advantage of that allowed you to, one, gain knowledge that was accessible to other people, but they did not take advantage of, and those social programs, they put you in a position to be more successful than you currently were? So those are two questions I have for you.
So no, to answer your first question, I don't think I'm an exception at all. I just think that there are some folks who have a take action gene, if you will. There are some folks who have this information, but for whatever reason, they don't have the courage, they don't have the belief in themselves to actually apply the knowledge to where the knowledge, and they don't actually see themselves being able to succeed, in spite of the fact that there are so many models out here. So as my brothers from one of my favorite rap groups, Precise Science, once said, not everybody's going to make it. Everybody's just not going to make it. So that's just a fact we have to accept. Were there any social programs that I took advantage of? Basically, because we were poor, with regard to attending university, I was able to get financial aid, and so, yeah, I mean, that definitely helped me pay for college. And, fortunately, I graduated with no college debt, which is unfortunate for a lot of these students today. They are graduating in the hole, 30K, 40K in the hole, which basically, oftentimes keeps people in poverty.
All right, Marcel.
Yes, sir. All right. So my question is, I am kind of with Daryl, believing that you guys may be more of the exception than the rule. So I'm asking you, how do you think that we can increase the number, since you are proof that this does work? How do we increase the ratio of our people that are able to successfully do that? And then a second question to you is, you mentioned believing in yourself twice, and taking action. And what I want to ask you is, how can we do better with teaching our children about that? Because not everybody, your mother did a great job, obviously, of sewing that into you. I can speak from experience that my parents didn't. I got that's not a job, you got to do this, that, the third. This is your ceiling. This is what you can aspire to, right? And I mean, I'm 34, and to this day, those things are still affecting me mentally. So I just want to hear your perspective on that.
So no, my mother had, she didn't instill any financial literacy, any ideas about,
not particularly financially, but just in general,
No, not even in general. I mean, because, she didn't have any education. I mean, she did the best that she could with the knowledge that she had, so it was me seeing her struggle. You see what I'm saying? Me seeing her struggle, which encouraged me to want to live a better lifestyle, and also people who I surrounded myself with. I got into real estate really based upon a sister who I was dating, who had all these real estate books in her basement. And I would always see these books. And I just decided one day, I said,
Come on.
Is that me freezing too or him?
No, it's
No,
him.
that's him.
All right. We'll try to give him. I pause this time at 3 minutes.
And he frozen.
Yeah. So yeah, we got 3 minutes and then we're gonna go right into the dialogue after. Thank y'all for coming in.
Larry, can you hear me?
Yeah, you got 3:45 and then
I'm
we
sorry.
got one more question after you. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, my internet connection is unstable.
Okay, yeah.
But real quickly, yeah. So basically, I got into real estate pretty much on my own from reading books. Again, a lot of other folks read books too, but they don't act on the information. So you have to apply the information, right? The other thing is, how do we get this across to our children? I've been a JEGNA for the last 20 years, right? I've been teaching this stuff consistently to young brothers, basically living by example, showing them the importance of showing them how to use credit responsibly, teaching them, how they establish credit, how to maintain a good credit score. Also teaching them about real estate, right? If you're looking to buy a house, why not buy a multi-unit, live in one unit and rent the other unit out so that you can live potentially rent-free, while you are actually establishing a real estate portfolio. I've had several young students say, I never thought about that, Mr. Johnson. That's right. That's why that's just our responsibility as JEGNAs, right? That we gotta live by example and pass this information on to these young brothers. Also, the stock market. A lot of folks in the so-called conscious community, the woke folk, have a tendency to shun the stock market. They say it's a scam, it's gambling. Well, if you're starting your own business, is that not a gamble? Life is a gamble. So the stock market is not a gamble if you do your due diligence and you actually study it. I make thousands of dollars online every day from the stock market. And considering we've been on this unconstitutional lockdown for the last 3 months, it has served me well, man. You see what I'm saying? The regular economy has been closed down, but the stock market has been wide open. And guess what? I've been taking advantage of that. But a lot of folks can't do that because they don't have the information or the knowledge because they think that the stock market is a scam.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for your answer, brother. And I'll just say this as a
let Asafa go because his time is running out.
All right,
go ahead. Question.
So, according to the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Poverty in America, in the United States, we have 40 million people living in poverty, 18.5 million in extreme poverty, and 5.3 million living in third world conditions of absolute poverty. Now, how they measure that is based on living on $2 a day. That's extreme poverty, third world levels of poverty. Most of that is in different pockets, not all, but a lot of Black people. Now, if you add in the people who are near poverty, those people who are 1 or 2 paychecks away from being impoverished, the number skyrockets to 150 million people. So I gather from your remarks that 150 million people just aren't action takers and they aren't willing to do whatever it takes to be successful. So I would certainly love to see your data on that. I have more data here from the Journal of Contemporary Economic Policy. The title is A Subaltern Middle Class, the Case for the Missing Black Bourgeoisie in America. Quote, as will be demonstrated here, use of even modest standards for evaluating class position calls into question the very existence of a Black middle class. For Black Americans, the issue may not be restoring its middle class, but constructing a robust middle class in the first place. So,
question.
There is no Black middle class if class is defined by wealth. So we have the money, the little bit of money we have in our community in the hands of a small elite group of Blacks, while the rest of us are relatively wealthless. So my question to you is, do you have any type of data or research that shows, and I'm going to repeat this, that shows that these financial literacy, there's a connection between financial literacy and it benefiting financially the widespread of not only Black people, but people in this country altogether.
I mean, I'm not a statistician, bro. You know, and so I can only speak from my own personal viewpoint. And so what I'm basically, I'm here as an example, right, of what being financially literate and actually applying the information and applying the knowledge, but most importantly, being financially disciplined, right? You got to be financially disciplined. I mean, what I found is that a lot of us in the community, not all of us, right? So I got to qualify that by saying a lot of us in our community, when we do come across, some money, we have a tendency, right, to see that money as what can it do for me now, as opposed to having a long-term outlook or a long-term perspective on how investing that money can be more beneficial, as opposed to basically spending the money now on a nice luxury car, on a nice watch or whatever, So, I mean, the fact that, there are a large number of African Americans or American Africans in this country who are in poverty, whatever that may mean, quote unquote, it does not mean that a large number of those people, if they were financially disciplined, if they had the financial wherewithal, could not pull themselves up out of poverty. So you are assuming, based upon, this data that you have gotten from whatever organization, that because there are so many people, according to this data that you have gathered, that are in poverty, that there's no way that all these people could not be just, in poverty because they are not action takers. I will say a lot of them are in poverty because they are not action takers, bro. They are.
So the time is, so the,
I have a statement and question.
Wait.
Yeah, me too.
All right, so the time is up, and now we're gonna go into this.
Can we freestyle? Can we freestyle?
We freestyling now, but we have to be very respectful of each other. And I'm gonna probably mute y'all if you start getting long-winded, so we can have everybody chime in.
Okay.
Now, because you was the last speaker, you can either pose a question or you could critique something that you heard earlier.
Okay, let me propose a question then. I mean, why is it that when we speak about, wealth, and money, we always use white people as a reference, man? Well, the average white family has approximately $100,000 in their savings account, as if we should have that as well. Why not? Why shouldn't we have $500,000 in our bank account? Why does white people always have to be the standard?
Before you chime in, I love that question, because it almost makes me wonder, like, who the hell else do we have as, like, who even taught us about wealth? But go ahead, Daryl.
All right. So the reason why whites are the standard is because whites have constructed the Constitution. They created the banking system. They created monetary. They created the system that we live by. So because of that, they are the standard, if you want to believe it, like it or not. That's one. Two, if you're asking, why this mindset is something that has kind of, I like to say, like, infestated Black folk, right? If you're saying like they're not action takers, or a large portion of them are not, but once again, you're neglecting to identify the systematic things that have been put in place. I could have $100,000 in my pocket, right? But if the system makes sure that I can only buy a home that's $50,000 and my interest rate is super high, it still puts me at disadvantage, right? And the thing is, like, I understand you have had wonderful experiences, and a lot of times you attribute those experiences to your knowledge, and I applaud you. But there's also situations where very knowledgeable individuals do not have the same access or abilities as you, right? So the perspective of Black in America is so vast that at times we tend to look at those who are disenfranchised or impoverished as, you just ain't doing something right? Because our perspective and our experiences are so different. So I think that requires us all to be a little more understanding that my blackness is different from your blackness, right? You know, your blackness is different, you know, from ourselves, right? And what Marcel was saying a little bit earlier wasn't about, you know, teaching our kids about the books. He was talking about that mentality, right? He was talking about how can we translate to our next generation that mentality, right? And that's something that, you know, as a teacher, I always say I'm raising kids first and I'm teaching them second. But because we don't have that those figures in our communities that are teaching that you know, that mentality versus the knowledge, right? Because you have some dudes that was just street dudes that had that mentality, that had no sense of literacy, right? But that mentality allowed them to be in a different place. So we're not just talking about book smarts, right? We're talking about the ability to like I said, leverage what you already have to get what you want. And that's it.
So I want to give
I have a statement.
I want to give Simonetta and Didi a time to chime in on anything that they heard they want to respond to. So Simonetta, you go first, and then Didi and her son who's ready to talk. Go ahead.
Thank you guys. I have a question / kind of like a statement. So when I think about a marketplace relies on both consumers and producers. And so when we think about like Black economics, I feel as if like in the American system, Black people are made for two things: labor and to be consumers. We haven't been put in the position where we could be major producers, aside from what I mentioned earlier, small and medium-sized enterprises. So in our sense, it seems as though consumerism is good for the producers. Saving, being a group of people who are savings oriented, like those who are saying have $1 million in the bank, we're not made for that, right? Because if we are saving, whose business is going to suffer if you're not patronizing their businesses, if you're not spending your money? The system requires that money continues to flow and money continues to cycle. That's why the whole system of credit was created. So how do you kind of approach sort of like where we're trying to go with trying to heighten Black businesses, trying to like create this ecosystem without confronting that reality, that consumerism is a part of that?
I love that. Didi, you can get first stab if you want. If not, anybody else can go.
Can you repeat the last part of the question then?
Yeah, sure. So I'm trying to figure out how to continue with the whole point of, okay, you want people to build wealth meaning you have to save, you have to invest, and all those things like that. But how do you like kind of reconcile that with the reality that we have been constructed to exist in a system as primarily for labor and to consume? How do we expect all these Black businesses to thrive if no one is consuming and everyone has the mentality of, I'm just going to save and have $1 million in the bank? $1 million in the bank to do what? You know, these small businesses, which majority of us have small and medium-sized enterprises. How are we expecting these businesses to survive if we're all thinking about just saving and having $1 million in the bank?
That's a great question, Queen. I personally don't recommend saving and having $1 million in the bank. Me personally, I recommend multiplying our money in the foreign exchange market, because with that system, we can actually multiply our money while we're sleeping. And I don't remember who said it, but if you're not multiplying your money in your sleep, then you'll be working a job forever. And that's not what we were created to do. So there's so many ways that we can actually create residual income where we're working smarter and not harder. There's so many ways that we can multiply our money. And I never really suggest saving it, because $6.6 trillion is being printed every single day, and it's paper coupons. Money is energy, and we are energy. So it's just about really just getting educated and teaching other people, each one teach one, teach these people, our people, education. And once it's applied, then we can make the changes, and we can stop relying on people that don't really give a damn about us. Excuse my French, but we got to focus on what we can do for our communities, because it's for our people. I'm not waiting for nobody to save us because we're not getting saved. We got to get up and get the education, get the knowledge, and get the money, and then make the changes.
So let me do a response and a question. So I think we should probably I think our community we struggle with the concept of education and the purpose of education. Purpose of education is to solve problems, to advance or protect some kind of interest, right? And so there's no such thing as neutral education, right? Like the education that you receive is not going to be neutral. It's gonna advance in a group, right? So, and the brother asked earlier about, well, why do we have to be like white? Like, who taught us to like get more, profit, like build, multiply, like for what? What's the end goal? Like, so that's my question. What's the end goal of like hoarding or getting all this money or multiplying or like?
So we can changes, so we can stop relying on a system that wasn't created for us or by us. So
give me an example of a change that you could be talking.
We can create our own banks, our own schools. We can multiply our money within our own community, and we can grow our own crops. If you in a certain neighborhood,
let's start there. Have you read this before?
No, sir, not yet.
So the chances of you creating your own bank in America, think about this, that has a government that can control how banks operate and have a history of economic hegemony and violence against Black people. The chances of you making a bank and being profitable is almost impossible. Like, you know about the Freedmen's Bank, like any bank that was created for us was exploited. So again, I don't hear people talking about land at all, for real. It's almost like this idea of like money, and then.
No, I said grow your own crops.
Okay. Well, I'll even add to that. Not to cut you off, but I'll even add to that, talking about land. Just an example of the disparity. 5 families, all of them white, and this country.
Is that for me or everybody?
No, that's
I'm
it.
sorry.
You back now.
You're
Yeah,
cutting in and out. Sorry, could you repeat yourself?
I think he's frozen.
Yeah, he's frozen.
So right after he finished, I want Tim, Dale, Eric, and then Marcel, if y'all need to chime in, and then we can keep going around. So everybody get in.
Hey,
right,
family, I'm gonna have to cut out in a little bit.
Okay.
I love y'all. Larry, if you want to get rid of my contact, I'm in Durham, North Carolina, man. It was a pleasure talking to you guys. All right.
Same here, bro. Have a good night.
You too.
All right, Saf, I think he froze again. All right. So while he's coming back, Eric, Dale, or Marcel chime in, and then Tim too. If anybody need to chime in on something that was said, we're not going to stay too long too. I know we've been on here for 2 hours so far.
I got to break out shortly here too as well. But no, I mean we already have we already have a few established banks, right? So I think we have the area of of bank creation covered. I don't know if we support the banks that we do have enough, but we certainly have banks that we can support that we own.
Right.
As far as the question about how do Black businesses thrive when we are just constantly saving and hoarding money? I mean, well, you have to, we do have basic needs, and so we are always going to spend money, regardless if we are saving money or not. I mean, we're always going to spend money, right? And so you as a business owner have to basically be familiar with what the market demands. I mean, the market, capitalism is all about supply and demand, and so you got to see which area or areas that are not being fulfilled and fill those areas, in the marketplace, and so even if we are saving money, I mean, if obviously we have to eat, we buy books, We have to, we have, basically consumer staples that we all use regardless of how much we are saving, soap, different toiletries, et cetera. And so you as a business owner basically have to become familiar with what the market wants and needs, and you have to fulfill that need.
So I think that answered your question. Yeah, I'm gonna let you go. I think that answered your question earlier. You said, well, why do the white person have to be our mark? Like, you couldn't learn any of that stuff that you just said, like exploiting markets and like you wouldn't have learned it from their economic, other than their economic practice. So it's kind of like that kind of answered the question of why we think the way we think and value the things we value. You might be frozen though. Go ahead, Asaf.
Yeah, so here's the problem, and everyone who's kind of pushing this financial literacy thesis and we can do it ourselves and we can pull ourselves up and all like that. Here's why I believe that type of rhetoric is rather tone deaf, because all of it is based on the presumption that Black people have this widespread, disposable, expendable income. And we don't. We do not. Okay? So I'm hearing one brother said it, well, I just paid the money for the real estate and I just invested this money in. So where are we supposed to get this money from to invest in Wall Street? Where are we supposed to get this money from to buy the house? Where's this money coming from? Okay? And again, we have to go back to the numbers. I'm not hearing any data. All I'm hearing is anecdotes. My cousin's brother's sister's friend did this, so therefore this should be a prescription for all of Black America. So I mean, we need to, we need to actually get, if we're going to have conversations like this, I feel like we need to actually have solutions based on research, based on the science, based on the data. Because where we're going with it, go ahead, I'm sorry.
So Didi says, learn how to multiply. If you get educated, apply to education. Explain how you could do that so you talk about the numbers of people in poverty, right? And again, so let me tell you about this lady real quick, right? So she was going to do a book on researching banks in America, right? She's not a Black woman. She's from Iran. She's an Iranian woman. But she ended up making this the title of the book because when she looked at the book, she was like, God damn, like America did this and they're doing this, right? So everything you think you know about the banking system, you should probably like either do the research or do the research based off her research. But my question is, even if you don't know about all the things that put people into poverty, because for real, like when you keep saying that financial literacy is the tool, and it's almost like, well, because you don't have this, that's why you're not going to be able to make it. So my question is, how do you teach people, you said multiply, who had -$7 in their account to multiply that? Because you multiply -7, that shit could be -14 tomorrow.
No, I feel you, King, and that was an amazing question. And I am just speaking on behalf of me because I've had
we need us, baby. We need us.
Right. So what I'm saying is, and because of the platform and the community that I'm partnered with, is over 200,000 people that look like me and you that are getting educated and are sharing this education with other people, and they're getting the same result and better. And it's, again, each one teach one. So it's being spread throughout our community. We're teaching our children this information. So it's happening, whether or not, enough people right now is aware of it. But that's what my mission is. And that's what we're doing collectively. So people are getting educated.
Let me ask this question. So you said about 20,000?
200,000.
Oh shit. Okay, 200,000. That's a lot of people.
Yes,
and I don't want to get too deep into your personal business, but what is the goal to like control the land, do political power, and education, and like what is the goal for that? Like, do y'all have
all of that? We're here to empower, enrich, and educate families to learn how to create multiple streams of income, to learn how to.
No, that's not my question. Like, so it's 200,000 people now, right?
Approximately, yes.
All right. So let's say if it's 100,000, let's take 100 away. Do you think the 100,000 that's educated right now, can they not, like, shouldn't we see some real shit right now? Like,
we are, and again, but it's again 1% of the world. 95% of the world is working for money, while 5% is either a big business with systems or 1% investor mindset. So while 95% of the world is working for money, 5% of the world is making 95% of the money, and that's facts.
And I agree with that. I mean, I think, you know, in society, we have two classes. We have the labor class, we have the capitalist class. The labor class sees money as a medium of exchange for goods and services. The capitalist class sees money as a proxy for labor. Right? In other words, they don't work for, they don't exchange their time for money. They allow their money to work for them to make them more money.
And we learned that from who?
Look, man, we didn't learn that from what. Look, we were successful way before we came in contact with Europeans, man. Where do you all get
successful? But listen, successful is good. Successful is good, but the definition of success had to change. You can't tell me that the definition of success didn't change. Because we wasn't always exploitive and putting even chattel slavery. Like, that wasn't our goal.
But so slavery has always been around, man. Yeah, chattel slavery was the construct of Europeans, absolutely. But slavery has always been, you know, around even before the Europeans implemented chattel slavery, which meant that, you know, you were not looked upon as being a human being. You were property. But however, slavery before that, folks still.
So are you trying to talk about indentured servitude? Where
yes, exactly. Yes.
So they was repaying.
But still,
real quick. You said the same way. So if it's the same way, then that means not only chattel slavery, denying of your humanhood, your access to family, all the stuff, and after that, start redlining. So you're trying to tell me that that's always been the practice?
No. You were saying the idea of selling goods and services.
The idea of success. So you said
success. I mean, success is relative. I mean, success does not have to be tied to money.
That's what I'm saying. So your definition now today of success is very, 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 very contaminated by Europeans. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, if it is, that's fine. But I'm not
out here. No, it's not. She's saying no, it's not. So go ahead.
Well, I mean,
it's not everyone. That's relative. Everyone's success is different. For me, success, because I didn't grow up with my mother or father, success to me is having great wealth, but also raising my children in love or with love. So everybody has a different idea of success. But at the end of the day, money is a tool and a resource that is necessary to live.
That's
so
right.
So is winning in capitalism successful to you?
I apologize. I didn't hear that.
Is winning in capitalism successful to you?
Can you say it another way?
Well, what is your definition of winning?
Right, because I'm winning.
You say winning is, I don't know. Like, I don't.
No. You're asking the question.
I don't think you can win in capitalism, but practicing, learning capitalism, working your way up to where you can be individually. You have money. Is that success to you? Winning, playing capitalism, winning, is that successful to you? Like, when you think about capitalism,
I don't understand your question.
Maybe I can't articulate it. I tried my best, but
well, you got to tell us what winning is, Larry. I mean, what is winning to you, Larry? Because you're asking the question. It's winning in capitalism, so you obviously have some definition of what winning is.
The reason why I said it's winning is because y'all said y'all have your own definition of success. So if you reach success, you won. Right? So if you have your own, if you have your own if you have your own definition of success, you'll probably have your own definition of winning. So my question is, whatever the hell you define winning as, winning in capitalism, would you call that successful? Benefiting from capitalism, being a capitalist, or whatever.
For me personally, winning is when I'm winning with all the people that I love or that I'm connected to, because to me, winning is a team sport. I consider winning to be a team sport, a family sport. So for me, no. The answer would be no.
Okay. Anybody else in terms of that question?
So the idea of the ruling class, I will concede that the numbers that the sister pointed out about the 5%, I believe, I don't remember exactly what it was, but the issue here is that Black people are where they are today, on the brink of economic and financial ruin in our communities, third world poverty throughout the United States, is because we've been locked out of wealth systematically. Okay, there's a book here by Richard Reeves called Dream Hoarders, and he talks about not only the 1%, but the top 20% who only share the wealth and opportunities amongst themselves. And despite their liberal leanings, they don't want any policy in place that benefits those who are beneath them. Okay, so the gulf that exists between the top 20% and the rest of us financially is growing wider and wider and wider. Okay, there isn't a 5% mindset. There isn't like, okay, well, if we think like the top 5%, we'll be able to make it and we'll get rich. Let's do away with that. That's not true. Okay, you know, these people have the money that they have because policies and were put in place to help them gain wealth and hoard the wealth only amongst themselves. Okay, so we need to do away with this idea that if we just think like the rich people, we'll be rich. That's not true. And again, I'll ask over and over and over again, if that's the case, if what you're arguing is the case, please, I'm begging you, show it, prove it. Not by your own experience, but prove it by the numbers.
So Eric, then Laura, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you know, becoming quote unquote successful, thriving financially in this capitalistic culture that basically is structured on systemic racism, it does start with a mindset. Now, of course, it's not the mindset alone, but the foundation of being successful at anything, man, starts with how you think. You know, I don't get why that's an issue. You know, I'm not saying that you can sit and meditate on becoming rich and you're going to become rich. No, it requires resources. It requires networking. It requires you getting up off your behind and actually putting in the work, man. And guess what? Even if you do all that, some folks are still not going to make it. And I understand that. You know, I embrace the reality. Some folks just are not going to make it, white and black. You know, I'm doing much better than a whole bunch of white folk that I know, you know. So what I'm saying is the foundation of anything, whether it be reading a book. I mean, you're not going to read a book without first thinking that reading is important. You know what I'm saying? It just doesn't make any sense.
Okay, Laura.
I'm going to say that, yeah, you're absolutely right. You're not going to read a book if you don't think reading is important. And when you use reading in schools as a punishment, people resent it. I feel like luckily I was homeschooled. So when I was 15, you know, my mother gave me Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I learned about personal development. That was my favorite category of books to read, but you're not going to see a lot of personal development books, unfortunately, in our neighborhood. And I think that is part of the bigger problem as well, because like you said, it is a mindset. And if you've been taught your whole life that, you know, you can only, the only avenues that you can really get into is teaching or engineer work, you know, basically being a worker bee, you're, you know, it's the narrative that's pushed on us, unfortunately. And I think that we have a tendency, just kind of from what you said, Eric, that, you know, you're doing a lot better than a lot of white people that you know, that's wonderful. But I also kind of feel like it's one of those things that we can get comfortable with our own successes that we forget that just because we made it out, that, you know, anyone else is just lazy because they might not have even known that there was that route in the first place. For instance, there are a lot of people who've never heard of the book, The Four Agreements. There are a lot of people who don't even realize that the English language itself, we're constantly casting spells on each other. Words have lives. You know, if you want to get religious with it, you know, they said in the beginning there was the word, and we all use the word in the worst ways possible on ourselves. When we say, you know, oh man, I'm stupid, or I can't do this, I can't do that. Where we grow up constantly hearing, oh, you can't do that, or you're not allowed to do that. Stop. You know, no, it's a negative mind frame that we're living through. So until we are taught that we have to actually break through these chains in the first place, we're screwed. And that we can't blame someone for their own ignorance if they didn't even know that there was a glass ceiling that was put up around them in the first place. So I think that it's really, we have to think of a way as a community, as a people, as a whole, to make this not something that is just in one little shelf of the libraries that nobody ever goes to, that this is just that it's looked at as the law of attraction is looked at as woo, you know, like mystical or esoteric or something like that. No, like the reason why you have people who are constantly, you know, if we want to go back to, you know, white people who are wealthy right now, they know how the law of the world works because they were taught it and they suppress that knowledge. And there are some of us that we can easily tap into that, but if we don't realize how powerful our minds are, and we don't start using intention and focus, and if we stop, if we keep our mind only on the problems that we're facing and not thinking about focusing on the solutions, then we're never going to think we're not even going to be able to see that people can come around to help conspire to make what we want happen. And I'm not saying you can sit on your butt, but if you're intentional and you actually have a purpose, then that is power. Like attracts like. Everything, the world is based off a frequency and vibration. So if you put that vibration of your intention out there, then the universe and the world, it's going to help bring it to you. But if you aren't looking for it, if you don't have eyes to see it, you're not going to see these opportunities. If you don't think that you're even past that, oh, you know, that's, you know, investing, oh, that's for those people. That's not for me. Or, you know, Black people, we don't do that. You know, that's risky. We're taught you got to play it safe. But in this world, everything is a risk. And I think someone said this earlier. So I think that the biggest problem is we're not going to take risks without the mindset of thinking it's okay to fail. We think that we get punished if we do something wrong, so we don't act. That's why you have so many people that are paralyzed right now and not moving and not getting out of their circumstances right now, because they think that if they do it wrong, then they're going to be ridiculed by the people around who said, I told you it wouldn't work. So I think it is definitely a mindset thing that we all have to work on.
I don't think anybody will argue that your mindset puts you in a position to make right decisions, right? For instance, my mindset is very similar to yours, but I will never be a capitalist, and I don't want to be in exploitive relationships with people. That's just not my value system. Right. Now, what happens is we sometimes be like, and unfortunately, we probably don't know this, but sometimes whiteness helps us get this bootstrap gospel and spit it back at everybody else. Like, y'all, like, yo, the woman got raped 7 times. Her grandmother don't trust banks, right? She saw her husband got shot in the face. And you're going to say, you ain't strong enough. You need to, like, that doesn't make sense. It's not logical, right? So you try to, like, deny her trauma. And if you think about America and our people in America, if you're trying to deny the general trauma, that wouldn't make sense, right? Us individuals, and not only that, not everybody have to experience the same kind of trauma. We both can go through a traumatic experience, and it might not be traumatic to me, and it will be to you. Like, we got to take those things into account. It's not like these things didn't happen. Those things are not still happening. again, the sister said something about banks. We always used to say that. Let's buy bank. But until we actually see what happens to banks and how our banks are deposit only, and then the whole concept of lending to black people versus white people, like we can't act like these stuff doesn't happen. You know what I mean? So it's not a fact that it's the mindset. No, we understand that you have to develop a certain kind of mindset, but I assume all of y'all who've been through some shit, y'all did some kind of inner work. There was somebody around there, they put y'all in a better space and meditate. Orishas, I don't know, whatever the hell y'all do something, right? And you got to know it. Somebody introduce you to it, and sometimes that's not the case. And so I want us to keep that in mind. And I know we run out of time, so we can do some final words. Everybody do a final word, chime in, and then we can wrap it up for the night.
I want to just.
I
want to thank everyone. I think this was so. I didn't really know what to expect when I signed up and said yes, right? But I'm very grateful that I did, because this was a little uncomfortable for me, and it was a little stretch because I don't know anyone on the other side of this beautiful phone. So I just want to thank y'all, because this was really great. I also want to just let everyone know, if they are looking for an opportunity to multiply their money and get educated on residual income, make residual income, listen, I am the plug, because it has blessed my life. I've been doing it for 2 years, and each one teach one. Thank you.
All right. We can go up to Dale and then go to, I don't know how y'all screen is divided, but Dale, then the beautiful couple, Asafo, Bob, Eric, Tim, and Seminetta.
Okay, I could go. I was kind of thinking through what I wanted to say. I guess I'll try to make it quick and formulate it like at the same time. I think with, when we're talking about capitalism, we're talking about economics, and we're talking about wealth and what wealth means. I think at some point, we have to think about, what are we trying to aspire to have in order to do what? We could talk about here different ways to make money, to what end, to do exactly what, to guard against what, think for our community, not just within America, but across the globe, Pan-African, thought would be, how do we create an economic infrastructure that supports what we need to empower us, but also be protected, so that it doesn't get burned down like a Black Wall Street. And I think as we have conversations like that, and we're looking at, well, how do we make other people aware of what we need to do in historical context of things, I think that's a part of the education and generational wealth that we talk about, is how do you pass along this knowledge across people who exist now and pass that down to future generations to build upon whatever it is we're able to create now. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Is it okay if I?
Yeah, go ahead. Then we go to couple after you. You're frozen though. Oh, what happened? Oh, maybe you're not frozen.
Can you all see that?
Yep.
Okay. So this is from CNN.com. Sean Pleasance has the kind of resume that would attract the attention of any job recruiter. High school valedictorian, economics major from Yale University, so I guess he would know a little bit about, financial literacy. Wall Street, banking jobs. Oh, that's another phrase there. Small business entrepreneur, but a few wrong turns in his life 10 years ago left him homeless. And today he's living underneath the tarp in the Koreatown section of Los Angeles. So why do I show this? And I have about 12 of these. So, but we ran out of time, we won't be able to cover them. So we need to understand that our wealth, whatever wealth we have, whatever financial stability that we have, isn't going to come from pulling ourselves up by the bootstraps. Is it going to come from each one teach one? Is it going to come from, this kind of what we've talked about, like financial literacy and learn how to invest in Wall Street and all like that? Is going to come from actual policy. Okay. Activists for years have been calling for a Marshall Plan for the Black ghettos. Okay. a type of influx of money and investment and things like that that will build the Black standard of living on a higher level. I have here a report that was done by the Kiron Institute for the Study of Race and Ethnicity and the Economic Policies Institute for Policy Studies. 10 solutions to bridge the wealth gap. This is what they recommend: reparations, Medicare for all, baby bonds, postal banking, debt forgiveness, living wages, and free college. Okay? Now, how are we going to get that? We get that through grassroots organizing and mobilizing. Okay? It's not going to, and this is one thing I wanted to point out before, but I just never had a chance to. I think this kind of, let's look inward, let's do it for ourselves. I think all that comes from a kind of fear of actually confronting white supremacy, the system of white supremacy. Okay? So rather than confront the system of white supremacy and deal with whatever backlash or punishment or retaliation or retribution could come from that, we kind of come up with this kind of, you know, milk toast piecemeal. Well, let's look inward. We have to rebuild our, you know, that kind of foolishness. But it's only going to, any development that we have in our communities is going to come from the influx of capital from this government that white people were able to get. And we're going to have to fight for it. We're going to have to protest. We're going to have to march. We're going to have to shut sections of the cities and what have you down. I have one thing, I won't show it for interest of time, but the mayor, the city, the leadership of Los Angeles, they're defunding the police department. They're going to cut $100 to $200 million. This was in the LA Times, from the police department, and give that money to Black communities. Okay? So, and they got that through protesting. Okay? So if we could replicate stuff like that all over the country, you know, we could make some gains here as far as getting more and more money into the community. But, you know, talk about circulating the black dollar and all like that, you know, all of this is kind of a mythology that we really need to do away with. It's not supported by the numbers. And I wish we would, you know, just understand that.
All right. Couple, and then Bob. Go ahead.
Here's my thing. We can't be going and asking the slave masters for more freedom, even if they give us little bits, $100 million here, 1,000, you know, whatever they're doing with this hand, they're doing something else behind your back, and we know that. So we can't go in completely with the mindset. Now, we can't go in completely with the mindset that we're going to ask them and they're going to just be like, okay, yeah, cool. Here's whatever you guys are asking for. Now, I do agree that we will have to fight for what we want, but you do also have to realize that we don't know what these people got and what they and their abilities, their capabilities, and what they can do to us. Okay, so going out in here in the streets and doing a lot of this stuff can be detrimental to us. And another point that I want to make is that I appreciate all you guys for coming on here and sharing your different perspectives, because I heard a lot of things that I did not consider, right? And not one of us has a monopoly on the truth. Each one of us has a different piece of the puzzle, and each one of our perspectives is valid, okay? And each one of us has 1,000, 1,000,000 people that think just like us. So if we can figure out a way to reconcile that into and bring in the brothers that's in the street doing the soldiers, you know, and bring in the financial people and all that kind of stuff, and make it that more holistic, then I think that's the way to go.
And I'll just add in on that note as well, that I almost want to yield to you, but I'll just throw into just a little as far as resources goes. Thank you, Dee Dee, for sharing yours, because there are a lot of people that they have access to things and then they just don't tell anybody. It's like, I'll tell people right now, like, if y'all got a business, I know of a co-op, put it together and we all shop together. There are a lot of people who are drowning in debt and or can't even pay their bills half the time. I know programs where you can get your student loans forgiven, you can get your insurances cut down, you can get your groceries and stuff lowered. There are a lot of people who are getting these discounts and are able to cut their expenses by $500 to $1,000 or more a month. And it's because of what they know and because they're a part of a larger group. So there are so many people in this country, if we all came together and started using that group buying power, smartly, then we wouldn't have as many problems as we have right now, and we would have more resources that we could put towards other things. Because at the end of the day, if you're struggling to just put food on the table for your kids, then you're not thinking about investing. If you're struggling just to be like, man, I gotta have insurance for my car because they make it mandatory, which I hate to say it though, there really should be some insurances in a sense can be one of the biggest ripoffs. That's why I say definitely shop around and look at your policies and stuff, because the whole system in itself, paying in something and then not even being able to get that money back, that's sad. I know of a healthcare program right now where they're like, it's not for profit. All of these other health insurances are for profit. That's why they deny your claims. They get money back when they deny your claims. So I just wanted to put that out there. If you are looking for something like that and you want to know that you're putting your money into somewhere that people aren't profiting off of it, and you can actually get money back for putting your money in for your healthcare, I got you. But resources like that, we gotta spread around.
So real quick before you go, that will entail what Asafa was saying. Like, you can't get those resources without government either control or regulation. So policy would make sense to be important, right? So a lot of these resources we're talking about, like the government either funds it, controls it, regulate it, or whatever. So like if we're gonna do anything, if we don't have political power, and that's what I was trying to, I guess that's what you're saying. Like, we're not gonna spin our way out of oppression, right? Not gonna consume it out, and we ain't gonna circulate the black dollar out when we don't control the damn banks. And so like, that's why it makes sense to, I know sometimes it's conflicting what we're hearing, but if you really think about it, like you're not gonna be in a government unless you do sovereignty, which I'm kind of telling us, unless you do that total and even be able to protect yourself, your ass gonna have to deal with the government. So you either deal with it and let it exploit you, or you deal with it and you can get what you want to get out of it. Just like politicians. You can either vote for the lesser of the two evil, or you create your own damn politician. Go ahead, Eric.
Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was going to say, thank you, Brother Larry, for bringing this platform together. I definitely appreciate the dialogue that everybody has put forth tonight. I mean, obviously, we're not all going to agree. Going to be on the same frequency about, various aspects of what we need to do to become economically independent and thrive in this country. But nevertheless, the brother mentioned, that at some point, in order for us to really manifest the communities that we truly deserve and desire, it's going to have to come through policy, and I do agree with that to some degree. But even if, those policies were to be put into place, and we were to obtain the resources that we definitely deserve, without the proper financial literacy, those resources will return right back to the hands that basically stole them from us, hundreds of years ago. So you definitely have to understand and know what to do with those resources, if we should ever be in a position to receive those resources. And again, as I mentioned before, this information that I have acquired over the years, I do teach this stuff to young brothers, on the high school level. I've been doing this now for the last 20 years. And we've also, when I say we, some brothers and I also have been able to, donate to scholarship funds for these young brothers who we are ejected to. you know. And so we're doing the work. I mean, we're doing the work. I'm not just, you know, saying, yeah, this is what I've been able to obtain, you know, for myself, and, you know, I got this and I got that. No, I'm actually sharing the knowledge. I'm actually donating to worthy causes that support us as a community. So no, I'm not just talk. I mean, I actually, you know, put in the work. And again, I believe that unless you are able to, you know, unless you are on, you know, have a financial basis in which you are able to thrive and support yourself, you can't help anybody else if you're struggling. You know, if you are struggling to pay your own bills, you can't help anybody else. So you have to get your own house in order first, and then once your own financial house is in order, then you can definitely, you know, get involved with the community at large.
All right, Simonetta and Tim.
First, I want to say thank you to Larry for organizing this. Larry does a good job of organizing these types of forums so that we can help to sort of elevate our consciousness. There's definitely a market needed for consciousness. So thank you for that. And this is my first time being a part of, you know, this sort of Zoom conversation. So I'm really grateful to everyone that has been a part of this. I've certainly learned a lot. I also hope that after all of this, there's some takeaways that we can get from this. Like when I was talking about Black businesses, I'm already thinking about platforms that have already been created to know which Black businesses to patronize in your area. There's WeBuyBlack.com. Right. There's another lady on here that was talking about how she has knowledge about other resources that you can tap to help lower interest rates. And like, we need a location that we can go to so that we can access this information. And I'm not sure if that's, you know, that's even widely available. I don't want it to be like one of those conversations where it's like, we talk, it's great, but then what is the takeaway from this? Like what information can we take from this? Tangible information can we take from this to spread and help other people?
Yeah.
I really liked the discussion tonight. It was really insightful. Just like you said, hearing everybody else's viewpoint. I mean, that's generational wealth to me. I mean, because I can take that and write it down like I've been doing here on my notepad, and just thinking to myself, it's like, okay, oh, wow, here's where I can also help other people at, or here's why I can go use Google and figure out more information, or reach out to one of the brothers or sisters here tonight and gain further insight. I mean, that's the generational wealth that I really liked about it. Just hearing different inputs and being able to have an open mind and say, how can I fit that into myself, and internalizing it, helping other brothers and sisters push forward. You know, in this capitalistic society, I think that there is a way for us as a whole, as Black people, to succeed. Yeah, capitalism can be rough, but if we start in our neighborhoods, voting the right people in, starting, you know, doing 501(c)(3)s, where the Black community can figure out, okay, here's where we have a dissemination of information. We can go to instead of a YMCA, we can go to this hub where we know, okay, this brother has a directive of information, or we can get this out. Almost like, say, I can go downtown and we can figure out, okay, I know this sister has a vegan restaurant. I know this place deals with taxes. I know a lot of the information isn't disseminated within our community as well. As we can talk like this amongst each other, it's not received if we try to go public with it. So I'm glad we're all like-minded. But this is very great. I mean, I love this. I love it.
So again, thank you all. Couple things. So Barter and Build is one of the platforms I created. It's only for African people who are solution oriented. And what we do is we practice group economics together. And our end goal is to be able to control and create our own currency. But the build part is dialogue is important. I know our community, like the microwave is our thing. So we get in there, let's get started. Let's just go to work. A lot of times I feel like it doesn't make sense to go to work if you don't understand what the hell the problem is or what the solution is. I know everybody feel like they do, but I would always bring the force-fed historical leader to the table. MLK, remember how passionate and how fervent, how powerful that brother was, right? But you also remember when he had to come to terms and put on his big boy pants and said, I think I'll lead y'all into a burning building. So to have that grit and humility, transparency to know that even if I'm running at this thing full speed, could there be another thing? So one of the things we do, other than Barter and Build and the lectures and all of that other stuff, we have a Black Men's Book Club. We are right now reading The Color of Money. And we went through a couple books, but that's a group where we read, we build, dialogue, and then we, come up with solutions. So we're working on a few things together. So if anybody interested in joining, we can do that. Eventually, I want things like the Black Love Book Club, but a single brother can't be in that group yet, even though I can't be in the group yet. But like, I want to be able to put us in spaces where we're reading together, studying together, growing. One of the elders was like, you only respect professors because they've been studying for 20, 30 years, right? And some of us get in this shit for 2 years, 6 months, 5 days, and we experts and shit, right? So you gotta really think about that. Like that's probably a problem. But I appreciate y'all coming, and I think I recorded. I don't know, maybe it's working. I'll probably share that one. And the next discussion, I don't know the topic yet, but if you keep following, we'll be able to dialogue and know what's the next question. The next discussion is. So I didn't know if anybody was trying to chime. All right, y'all. So appreciate y'all. Have a good night. See y'all.
Thank you. Great night.
Have a nice night, everybody.
All right.